Hi friends, how are you? I hope that you've had a beautiful and happy uh, Christmas, whichever way you've celebrated that. I hope that it's been joyous and just sending out unconditional love to all the friends around the world, not just in Australia, but right around the world. So from my family to your family, Merry Christmas, and I hope that I find you well under the circumstances. Today I'm really excited actually to bring you an interview which with a person that I deeply respect, and that is Jeff Mesra, and he and Paul started the Watchtower History.org channel. Now, what's unique about this, and I think this is a resource that anybody that's interested in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses, the actual academic interest in Jehovah's Witnesses, really should avail themselves to this resource. Now, there's many commentators, I'm probably one of them, who give commentary on Jehovah's Witnesses one way or the other. But what Jeff and Paul have done is they have actually gone to the actual archives. Now, Jeff has never been a Jehovah's Witness, so in reality he doesn't have skin in the game. And from this point of view, he gives a incredible scholarly approach to the subject. So, and I can see Jonas, how are you, my friend? Good to see you, my friend. You're doing great work. And I can see Jeff there. So before I finish my preamble, I think that what Jeff is doing is actually world class. The documents that he has relating to Jehovah's Witnesses in terms of their history are second to none. And rather than giving a commentary, he just gives the facts. And that is something I think which is absolutely essential in people identifying the whole beast that is Watchtower, the good, the bad, the indifferent. And I think that he and what Paul are doing with the Watchtower .org channel is world class. And hopefully I will be able to have Jeff on in a minute, and we'll be able to have a great chat, and I know that you will really enjoy what Jeff has to provide. So I'm just going to, let me just check, let's crossing fingers. I am, no, Jeff's not there yet. I'm this is good. I can add I can add Jonas, but I can't. Where's Jeff? Oh, please, Jeff, please let me add you. Hi, Julie, how are you? Please, Jeff, be there. Where are you? Oh my God, I thought this could only happen to Chessa. You haven't caught Chessa's illness, have you? Oh, I've got everybody bar you. Tony, I can bring you on. Oh, this building anticipation. Jeff, just check your settings, my friend. I will, when you have it. No, you shouldn't. I should just, hang on. I'll just go here. I'll just click on there. Jeff, no, yes, I will just check. I can see the beady little lights. Where are you? You're not coming up. Holy dooly. This is fantastic. No, you just check your settings, mate. I'll just check you again. Sorry, guys. It's all live, you see. It's all live. There is no... Aha! Here we go. Please let me be that. I'm adding. Here we go. Fingers crossed. Live. Don't work with, no. I can see you, Jeff. I can see it. You missed it. Oh, oh man. Oh, how are you, Jeff?
I'm great. It wouldn't let me connect on the computer, but I could connect on the phone. So
You can. It's actually excellent because I've got all and sundry giving us IT advice.
I'm a computer guy too. So,
Oh no, but Jeff,
mm.
you and I know what we're doing because we're ultimate professionals. We're just building anticipation for all of the thousands of people that will watch this. You know what I mean? They feel in control when they like that kangaroo. I'm from Australia. You must have one of those kangaroo phones, Jeff.
Well, let's hop into the discussion, shall we?
Absolutely. Jeff, I was saying your program, your channel, watchtowerhistory.org, is the preeminent uh, source for historical documents into the history of Jehovah's Witnesses. There's no doubt, and it's done without what I would call ecclesiastical commentary. It's just facts, and you've never been a Jehovah's Witness, and so you don't, in a sense, I'd like to discuss that a little bit, is you don't have any skin in the game. It's not like us. First of all, how did you, as a non-Jehovah's Witness, how did you come across, in a sense, Jehovah's Witnesses, and then your channel? So just give us a little bit of a background on what sparked your interest to do the research that you've done, Jeff.
So the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on our door when I was a child, a teenager, and we started a study with them for a couple of years. And I found it interesting, but they sounded to me a lot like the other churches. If you don't believe this way, you're going to hell or second death, right? So it caused me to go on a investigation, and I started collecting materials and collecting materials and collecting materials until it got to the point a couple of years ago that I wondered, what am I going to do with all these materials? And I started investigating some of the ex-Jehovah's Witness channels and Jehovah's Witness channels and books and such, and decided to start a history channel on Watchtower and some of the interesting things that we've discovered and found. That we've got a lot of rare items and a lot of personal items of some of the earlier founders that are important to the history. So if you've been on our channel, you'll see some of the interesting things that we have that no one else has seen.
You've obviously seen other books written about Jehovah's Witnesses. What do you think the quality of their research is compared to the actual archival evidence that you've found in terms of the telling of the Jehovah's Witness story?
Well, if you just look at the ones the Jehovah's Witnesses themselves have produced, I find that they're not approaching it from an honest perspective. It's completely whitewashed. And most ex-Jehovah's Witnesses would agree with that position. But the more I research the documentation behind what they're doing and find out the reasons why, it becomes even more fascinating. So an example of this is a recent discussion that Paul and I had on the Beth Sarim. And in the Proclaimer's book, there are 8 points that they make about Beth Sarim. So in our discussion that will be out in a month or so on our channel, we go through all 8 points and looking at the original documentation to see if it matches what's claimed in the book. 7 of them are fabrications or lies. Only one came out to be an honest evaluation.
So just for those who are not acquainted with Beth Sarim, can you just give us a little history of what Beth Sarim is or was, and just the history to Watchtower? Just a little bit on that.
So Beth Sarim is a mansion that Rutherford lived in during the 1930s, mostly during the winter time. This mansion was purchased for him, not with Watchtower funds, uh, and we investigate where the money came from. Always
Right.
follow the money, and you find
Yeah.
interesting things.
Mm.
But I'm not going to give the answer to that
No,
until
no,
you see
that's
the
fine.
channel. But basically, in order to make it palatable for the audience, what Rutherford decided to do was deed the property to the ancient men of old, like David and
Right.
Solomon and such. And he said that if they would show up, he'd give them the mansion. Otherwise, he was living in it himself.
I like it. So until David and Solomon turned up, he was going to live in the mansion.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it
that's
was a
fantastic.
comfortable mansion, very nice mansion. We also investigate the builder and who he was.
All right. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. I know you've got some historical stuff here. I'm really interested in what you've got. Can you just
Yeah.
show us what you've got, Jeff? Because I think everybody's going to really, really, and that is an amazing library there, may I say.
Yeah. Well,
So,
there's more on the other side. So,
yes, I know. Yes. So what have you got for us today? The show and tell.
yeah, show and tell. So we have some of the original. I got to figure out how to do this on my phone, right? Some of the original
Yep.
Watchtower magazines. I believe we've got either every single one, the originals, digitally or the actual original copies.
Yes.
But in order to investigate the history, we also need to investigate the splinter groups and what they claimed about the history as well. You don't know the full side of the story unless you get all of the different angles. Like when there's like Russell's separation trial with his wife. In order to get the
Yes, very
full
famous.
story, you have to look at what she said about it, what he said about it,
Yep.
and what was said in court. So that's interesting. So we have some of the Splinter Group magazines as well, the actual original copies here. But also, you need to have some personal correspondence. So we have some personal correspondence that we've acquired over the years. And some of these, it's interesting, the ones that I just showed were addressed to a Mrs. Ella Newkirk. So I had to investigate, well, who is this Ella Newkirk and why do I have so much correspondence from her? Found out she's actually Rutherford's blood sister,
Really?
who was a Bible student at the time. And
Right.
in 1916, a couple of weeks before Charles Taze Russell dies, Rutherford writes a letter
Wow.
to his sister. Here's the actual original letter.
Is that actually
That's
the
the actual
letter?
original letter.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
So this is in Rutherford's own handwriting.
Yes. Wow. Yep.
And
Is that
it's
the one that
interesting
I
because
think it is?
it's actually the one where he says to his sister, "If our brother should kill me, see to
Yes.
it that he be not prosecuted.
Oh my goodness.
Leave it entirely in the Lord's hands." So at least he had a good attitude, right?
Yeah. Jeff, could you just give us a little bit of background, just a tiny bit for everybody? So that's actually the original correspondence
Handwritten letter.
letters, right?
Yeah,
And
from
what
Rutherford
can you
himself.
just
So
what's
there's
actually
another
happening?
letter that explains it. So this one
Okay,
is
please
typed
tell
by
us.
Rutherford and has his signature there. And he basically is describing in the letter that there was a family farm and they were trying to talk about selling it, and there was a family squabble about selling the farm. And the brother threatened to kill him. So we investigated the brother and found he was quite a con man himself
Oh,
and in
right.
a lot of trouble with the law. So if you see our video on Judge Rutherford's death threat, we go into a lot of detail on those stories.
He should have started the
So,
religion, Jeff. The brother
yeah.
should, I think, he would have been qualified.
So another interesting thing about Rutherford is he visited he visited a burlesque in the early 1920s, about a week
Right.
before the memorial. Well, that was he was basically caught by one of the writers of the Finnish Mystery, the one who wrote the Ezekiel portion, and he
Yes.
wrote a pamphlet about all the details and history behind that. So we actually discussed that
About
on the
the
channel. So
event of
about the
Rutherford
event, they actually were
going to
going
the
to
strippers.
disfellowship. Yeah, yeah, they were actually going to disfellowship him. They take him in and have a trial and have a disfellowship trial. Unfortunately, the timing was that this brother passed away before it happened. It
So
wasn't
would
foul
you,
play. He had a bad heart, but we go into a lot of details on that. But to spite him, after this brother died, so he wrote the Ezekiel part of the Finnish Mystery.
yep.
You can see how thick the book is.
Yes.
After he died, Rutherford reprinted the book and removed his portion of the book. So
Well,
it's a lot
that's
thinner.
yeah. um, my question is, and you may not be able to answer this for whatever
Uh,
reason.
I
Yes.
may lose battery, so I'm going to have to plug in shortly.
No worries.
So I I'll see if I can connect on the computer. I have 5% battery and it's dropping
Okay.
fast.
Well, I want to
So
keep
let me
talking
get
to you.
plugged in, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Well, that's just fascinating. Hi, Janice. How are you? And Thomas and all of you. I hope you're enjoying this. That's life. That's the way it goes. Isn't that incredible? I was going to, and I will ask Jeff how he came about the documents. And this is really important because what Jeff and Paul have got is the actual original either letters, as he was talking about Rutherford and his sister. This is just incredible. And he's incredible. And the thing about it is that many people who have written books on Jehovah's Witnesses have privately sought out Jeff, and many of them have been gracious enough to include him in terms of the forwards and acknowledging the resources that he's got. It's second to none, and there's many other things that where's Jeff? Once he's back on, I'll just talk. It's worth hanging in there. His program is extraordinary, and if you get the chance to actually have a look at the Watchtower history.org, it's unbelievable. And he has footage there from Auschwitz concentration camp. To connect me, I will try, Jeff. Aha, let's go again. Let's try. Fingers crossed. Adding. Let's see. We're getting close. Can you hear me, Romana? I'm trying to add you. It's trying. One moment. Oh, this is all live. Well, there's no cutting and pasting here. It's live, so it's worth it. But I think for many people, when they start leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, and really any high control group, it's as difficult trying to add someone live. I like it. I'll just go there one moment. Where's Jeff? No, I'll go. I'll add you again. Let's go. Fingers crossed I can get Jeff back again. I think that to get the original documents, as Jeff he's got the original. What's happened here? Oh, can you hear me, Julie, at all? Romana, can you hear me? Just checking. Can someone give me a thumbs up that they can hear me? Can someone give me a thumbs up if they can hear me at all? Declined. Very quiet. What's happened there? Why is that? Try again. I'm fine. I'm ready. Oh, wow. What's happened? Ah, can't hear you. Well, what the hell's happened here? Why is that? What's happened? Why am I like that for? Should be fine. Just enough. Why is that? Okay, I'll try Jeff. Add Jeff.
There
Hello.
again.
My goodness gracious. What's happened there?
So if anyone knows how to connect on a desktop, we'll try that. So
Oh. Hey, I'm just, so you can hear me clearly.
yeah, you're
I
really
can
loud.
hear
You're very,
you.
very clear.
Oh, good. You're very clear. I'm just, Janice, can you hear us? Can you give us a thumbs up? Derek, can you give us a thumbs up? People are saying you're back.
Yep,
Okay, I
we
can
can
hear
hear you
you
again, Ed.
again. Great. Okay, thank you. All good sound now. Thank you very much, guys. This is really, Jeff. See, we're building anticipation. We do this on this
Yeah,
this
exactly.
live feed, don't we? Tell you what, we're not like Lloyd in the bunker. Tell you what, we don't have I don't have minions. This is it. This is raw. It's like the it's what do the young kids drink these days? Is it kiwa or something? The green stuff. It's just
Yeah,
raw. Put it in a
we're
blender and
talking
that's
about
what you get.
JWs here, so don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yes, yeah. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Janice says
So
just enough sound.
yeah.
Okay,
So a couple more things. Also
you go for it,
having
please.
some of the newspapers from the time period. This is
Yes.
1908, some of the originals here.
Yep.
But there was also a Watchtower newspaper that went out each week to Watchtower followers. And I have some of those as well. So actually, I have every single issue, but you can see there's a convention photo at the top. Had convention news, usually had Russell's sermon on the cover. There's a
Right.
bunch of photos at the bottom here. Whoops, once I figure out where I'm at.
No, you're fine. And can you just describe what's in the photos there down the bottom? Just of Russell at the lectern or
Well, here's Rutherford right here. This one is Judge
Rutherford? Yes.
Rutherford succeeds pastor. This is 1917. Ooh.
Oh, okay,
Let me get out of here.
Russell's dead. Yep.
So Russell had already died at this point, and that's an actual
Yep.
paper. But what helps is on the last page of that paper was all letters from the readers.
Right.
So if you really want to know what people thought at the time, not only looking at the watchtowers of the literature helps, but also reading the letters of the people who had their feet on the ground. They had boots on the ground, were actually in the field and giving their own opinions. And you could have different opinions back then. So it's interesting to see some of the discussions going back and forth on various
I was going to
subjects.
ask you, Jeff. I was going to ask you before we did the musical chairs. If you can answer this, you might not be able to. How do you come across, like, for instance, that letter, that letter from Rutherford and his sister and all of that? How do you come across those actual copies? I mean, can you describe a little bit of how
So,
how
so
you come
these
across them?
this letter was actually a very fortunate accidental find. So somebody went to a used bookstore in Missouri, bought some old studies in the scriptures, and these letters were inside those books.
Wow.
And knowing some friends of mine and I are very involved in the history,
Right.
contacted us and donated these letters to us.
Wow.
And having the correspondence with it, a lot of the correspondence came together, not all of it, but realizing that was actually Rutherford's sister and that was near where they lived, shows and proves that it's his. And also the signature matches between all the various Rutherford signatures that we have on file. I mean, I have a manna here with Rutherford's signature. So this was in Rutherford's hand at one time.
Wow.
So let's see here. I
With,
bookmarked it.
so do you have any, what I'm really interested in is the change that occurred from the Bible student movement to when Rutherford takes over. Do you have any, correspondence at that time that shows what Rutherford was up to at all?
Yes, there's a whole collection of various papers from three of the main points of view at the time. So Rutherford's point of view and the Watchtower Society. Then there was a group called the Pastoral Bible Institute who wrote up some paperwork. They actually went to a lawyer, and they have a letter from a lawyer saying that what Rutherford was doing was illegal.
Right.
And you also had the P.S.L. Johnson. He started the Layman's Home Missionary Movement.
Yep.
And you have his perspective as well. So you can only get the full, complete story if you mix all of that documentation together. But there's so much of it, and it's so difficult to understand that it takes a while to wrap your mind around it. But we know somebody who's writing a book on the subject right now, and I'm helping edit this book.
Yep.
I'm really impressed with the documentation and how simple he's made the story to understand. Perhaps next year it'll be out. I know Jim Penton is also editing the book as well. Professor Jim Penton, who's an ex-Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, most people know Professor Jim Penton. Have you worked with Jim Penton at all?
A little bit. If you have the third edition of his Apocalypse Delayed.
Yeah, great book. Great book.
Yeah, he's mentioned me in the preface for giving us some documents and trying to help him.
Yeah, well, that's really good.
So I've helped ex-Jehovah's Witnesses on their history books, but also some Jehovah's Witnesses. So there's a book called Organizational Identity, and there's 2 volumes of that. They mentioned me in their book as well for helping them out and getting some.
So Jeff, can you just hold that book up again and just tell us about that one?
So this is a series of 2 books so far, and another book by Nelson Barber. These are written by Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right, that's very important.
It is important, but they do very, very well on documenting their sources. And they don't always agree with the Watchtower, oddly enough, on some of these periods of history.
Wow.
They're trying to go by the documented evidence as much as they can. They do have some of their own personal opinion in there, of course, but they do make their opinion clear versus what the documentation says.
Right.
So I find it a very good book. There are a lot of things in these books that I did not know, and seeing the documentation for it, they have all the bibliography and where they found the documents underneath. So if you have questions about it, you can actually go and check the documentation yourself, if you can find the files or paperwork.
Jeff, that is why I want to make a point to everybody that is watching this and will share this. The reason why I've got you on, and I respect you personally so much, is because you can hold up books from genuine people, whether they're former Jehovah's Witness, never been Jehovah's Witnesses, present Jehovah's Witnesses, and all 3 groups of people are happy to work with you. And I think, to be honest with you, Jeff, that is a luxury that someone like me doesn't have. I mean, once, I was 4 generations of Jehovah's Witness or Jehovah's Witnesses. once I left the organisation, then I got labelled whatever, and that's it. But you, and this is really important, is that people that can go and should go to your resource, it's not an anti-Jehovah's Witness thing. It's literally just history. And that's really important, because when people are looking, they need to, like you said on, and I think it was a really good point, on Russell's divorce. You've got his side, you've got her side, and you've got whatever happens in the middle. And to get a full grasp of something, you need all of the sides. So I really thank you for that, because you are unique in this space, Jeff. You are really unique.
Because I've never been a Jehovah's Witness, I can straddle
That's
that
correct.
ground between both of these worlds.
That's
And
correct.
as long as I freely share the documentation with them, they also share with me. And I think that's the way
Yeah.
it should be. It should be a two-way street, you know, and we should look at the history, warts and all, and just state what the documented evidence says.
My question for you, and hopefully I'm correct on this, and if I'm not, I will correct it. I've said for a long time, and I've said it on my program on 6 Screens, that when the Watchtower Society first started with Connolly, with CTR, his father, and Mariah and so forth, it itself wasn't a religion. It only became a religion later on after Rutherford. Is that a correct statement? Am I on the right thing that Bible student?
I think so, because I actually live 15 minutes away from the Aurora University here in Illinois.
Yep.
And the Aurora University used to be a Second Adventist university.
Right.
Not associated with the Seventh-day movement, but more with the Advent Christian Union.
Yes, I understand.
And they were a loosely associated group of multiple Christians, denominations who had their own opinions, and they had a magazine called The World's Crisis. Well, Jonas Wendell, who's the guy who restored Russell's faith in the Bible, he was a Second Advent preacher. George Stetson, who visited Allegheny often and visited Russell and his congregation. Russell gave his funeral sermon when he died, also was a licensed Second Advent Christian preacher.
Right.
I've gone through almost all of their microfilms on this part of the history and made various snippets of this history as I went through. And even as minuscule as this person with this important name, like Jonas Wendell, was preaching at this location at this date, I tried to gather all that information so that we could track the whereabouts where some of these individuals ended up at.
Yes, really, really is interesting. What are some, I mean, I know you've got all your programs. Is there some little tidbit you'd like to, something that you found recently that you thought was rather interesting in terms of Watchtower history?
We did an investigation on Watchtower's first president, and that was not Charles Taze Russell, oddly enough. That was William H.
No.
There's not very much information on him out there. Actually, this book here, The Organizational Identity by the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have some information as well, and I have some of the same documentation. So Paul and I did a discussion on this recently, and we'll be posting that in about a week or two on our site. Very interesting discussion. We can give a little more information about this character and who he was. And he did not believe everything Russell believed, but he was a Lutheran and a Methodist at various times in his life. But they had a liberality of being able to study and discuss with each other. And they did that. When Patton left, he went into the Universalist thinking. John H. Patton kind of followed suit, going that direction. So, but he did write a couple letters towards the end of his life, just shortly before he passed away, in favor of Russell. So.
Right.
They had a good relationship.
And that part of Watchtower history, I know as a Jehovah's Witness, is never spoken about. Like, it's Connolly just doesn't exist.
One
Why do you
sentence in
think?
the
What
Proclaimer's book.
is that? Right,
I think it's just one sentence, yeah.
one sentence. Why do you think he was erased? Like, was there a legal issue there, or just a theological, or just embarrassing for them, or?
Well, imagine where are you going to get information on the individual? It isn't until the last 10 or 20 years that a lot of these materials have been available to the public, either
Right,
newspaper or a lot of the digitization of a lot of books on Google
right.
or archive.org. That's where a lot of this is found, or even the ancestry.com or
All right.
family search, right? To find a lot of information on those sites as well. 20 years ago, you wouldn't
That's
have been able to get this.
okay, that's really interesting, Jeff, because, and this is me making a comment on Jehovah's Witnesses. So, it's, I won't say deliberate. I don't, the facts have been hidden. I'll just put it that way. And I think, this is just my opinion, that the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses would rather have sleeping dogs lie, and you've hit on this. Suddenly we've got all of these resources, and there is this this transparency, I would say, of information, which really what's been hidden for, what are we talking about, in the witness context or Bible student movement, probably close on 140 years, is now, it's new in a sense now, or the way I look at it, is actually new information because no one had access to it. And I think, this is my personal opinion, is that's going to be very problematic when it comes to, for instance, Jehovah's Witnesses and trying to retell or recast their story, because from my perspective is that the Bible students and Jehovah's Witnesses have absolutely nothing in common. I mean, nothing. They don't believe alike. They don't see God the same way. They don't see, and that is a real embarrassment for Jehovah's Witnesses, because their story is a continuation of the same when it's actually not at all. So I think you really make an interesting point. Do you think there's more information coming out all the time, or
There
what do you
is,
feel on
and
that?
it's more cost effective now, a lot more cost effective, since a lot of these libraries of the world are scanning these materials. So you can make all the claims you want, this or that, but how do you know unless you look at the documented evidence? It's out there if you know how to find it. So an example of that, just recently I was watching the volume 1 of the history video that Watchtower did about 10 years ago.
Okay. Yep.
And they have a quotation in there about something George Storrs said. Well, since I live close to this university here and I scanned those materials, I went to fact check the quote because it didn't
Right.
sound like what I had read of what George Storrs had written. So when I went to fact check the quote, I realized it was completely taken out of context. The claim in the video was that Storrs had wondered how to organize a preaching work, how this could be accomplished. He didn't know. When you look at it in the quotation, in the actual context of the document that was written, it was what Storrs wasn't saying about himself, but what other people were saying about what Storrs believed. And Storrs wasn't saying that he was looking for a preaching campaign now. His suggestion was that in the resurrection in the future,
Oh dear.
that they would be preached to. So it had nothing to do with the preaching campaign now at all, or that he didn't know how the work could be accomplished. He was suggesting how it could be accomplished. So it's a quote that's taken completely out of context. But without the documentation, how would you be able to check? You could only
Right.
accept what Watchtower is saying. But that information's even out there on the net now. I've given those materials to several people, and I see them posted on websites all over the place. So if you look for it, you will find it.
So for you, as a researcher, if you've got a question, if you can't find the documentation, do you fill in the blanks, or do you leave it, or what's your guiding thing as a researcher?
If you can't find the documentation, you just make it up. No, no. Really,
Straight to the governing body for you. I like it.
no. I prefer to state what the documentation says. Show it on
Yep.
screen. Here's the documentation. There's questions. We don't have all the answers because we don't have all the documentation. But let the viewer decide. The viewer has all the information in front of them. They can decide which way they want to go with the evidence. But it should be
Yes.
based on the documented evidence.
Well, yes. With the, I saw one of your videos in which you've got, it's a fascinating video, and I hope everybody gets on and has a look at watchtowerhistory.org. You've got the footage there in Auschwitz concentration camp in Poland, and I've been there a number of times. My wife is of Polish descent and very close to her family history. There's been a lot said over the years about Rutherford's flirtation with Hitler. Jehovah's Witnesses proper get very upset about that. They say it's not true, that he was against Hitler and so forth. Others say he was. What does the actual documented history say about the rise of Adolf Hitler and Rutherford's involvement or not involvement of the support of the Nazi Party? What is there any evidence either way that sort of shows one way or the other?
It's interesting you should bring this up because I've seen this week a Jehovah's Witness attempt a defense of the Watchtower on this position.
That's
and
correct.
His claim was that the witnesses were the first ones persecuted. Unfortunately, that's not true.
No,
the Jews are persecuted straight right out of the gate. And Watchtower's response to that was writing a letter stating, hey, we don't like the Jews either. We don't take any money from the Jews. We have nothing to do with the Jews. Just don't bother us. Nothing about don't persecute them because that was going on. Is don't persecute us. And lots of anti-Semitic statements that even after the war, they published that book, the first edition of Let God Be True, in 1946, right. 1 year after the war ended. Right. They basically say it's a false prophecy that the Jews will ever be restored to their homeland. Right. And what happened in Germany was their own fault because they rejected Messiah. Really, they both suffered. They were both persecuted. And the Watchtower response is just appalling. It's hypocritical. Well, in 1948, when Israel became a homeland, Watchtower had a false prophecy there that they had to rectify. So there's a false prophecy many don't talk about. So what they did is they published a second edition of the book, and they removed that sentence from that book. And wrote in that, no, we shouldn't expect anything, that even though they're back in their homeland, they still rejected Messiah, and therefore they deserve what they got. Basically is the attitude that you see. Very anti-Semitic, very hateful, especially after so many died, and they were in the camps with them.
With I have not seen it personally, I've just seen commentary on it, is a correspondence. I'm not sure whether it was from Rutherford himself or Watchtower representatives to Adolf Hitler. I'm paraphrasing here, saying pretty much Jewish business people are, ruling the world, that sort of anti-Semitic language. Have you seen any documentation on that? Was that Rutherford, not Rutherford? Was it society? Can you sort of fill us? I'm very interested in this because I think we need facts on this. What do you know on that subject?
From my memory, in the 1975 yearbook, they claimed somebody else wrote that. But later on in a Watchtower, they actually said, no, Rutherford wrote it. So the Watchtower itself has two different views on the origin of that letter. But in one of our recent discussions, about a week ago, we actually read and put the letter on screen.
Right.
But we're also planning another deep dive into that portion of history to talk about more of the Watchtower claims on that, and also look at what they actually suffered through. So I went to Auschwitz 2 years ago and shot a lot of footage there with some
Yep.
friends, and we're hoping to use some of this footage coming up shortly.
So from the facts that you can see is at the beginning of Hitler's coming to power is that Rutherford was trying to appease him by saying, look, we're no friends of the Jews either and just leave us alone. Is that a fair enough sort of...
It's exactly how I would paraphrase that letter. But what else would and why would they be persecuted? What else would the German government have known about Watchtower Society in Germany? All the literature 2 years previous, up until at least 1931, was pro-Jewish. So they had a very big reputation for being Zionists and looking forward to the Jewish people getting a homeland. When Rutherford changed that in 31, that was not quick enough in order, a year later, January of 33, for the German government to even know that they had made a change in that doctrine, that they no longer believed that in the Jews. So the timing of it happened to be rather unfortunate for Watchtower.
Right.
I think it's not because of, it wasn't because of them standing against Hitler because of anything. It was because of their love for the Jews that they were persecuted. And the Jews themselves and anyone who loved the Jews were persecuted at that time.
Yeah.
Watchtower forgets to mention.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because Russell was probably the most prominent, probably the most prominent campaigner in the world for the establishment of the homeland for Jews, for the Jewish people. And his belief in that and part of prophecy was basically viewed as a crackpot, because even the prominent Jews of Europe, this is before the Holocaust occurred, they just think, what are you talking? This is just crazy talk. But you're right. I mean, they were absolutely, the Bible students were completely pro-Jewish, and that this was part of their belief system of God's plan for them. So yes, for Rutherford, boy, he must have been just beside himself, because, and I'm going to make a bit of a leap here, would it be fair to say that his personal bigotries were anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic to start off with? Would that be like Rutherford was pro and he was sort of, his upbringing was very anti-Jewish? Is that fair or is that unfair? What do you think?
I don't know if we can state that as a fact. He did write a book called Comfort for the Jews, right?
Oh, that's true. The purple one.
Right.
Yep.
And it's a good book. He, of course, in it, he was trying to pin the 1925 date and state that that was a fulfilled prophecy, but.
Okay. So what? Sorry, Jeff. What was, just for a recap? What was the 1920? What was that? Sorry, I'm going to write that down.
So the 1925 date was millions now living will never die, right?
Oh, so, dear. Yes.
If I have my show and tell here.
Do you know actually what happened to them, Jeff?
So here's an original advertisement for millions now living will never die.
Wow.
It's falling apart, but I have several of those. But 1925, he was claiming that the ancient men of old would return, not to San Diego, and that millions now living would never die. Well, I think they've all died. And now the attitude is... I
was wondering what happened to them, Jeff.
Millions now living... Now the attitude is millions now living will all die horribly in Armageddon.
Yes. So, and eaten by maggots, if you've seen...
But
Oh, that was,
Russell's
sorry.
Zionism is still known today. So I have several papers here. The United Israel Bulletin,
Right.
and you can see well, Russell's picture there at the bottom,
Yes, I can see
stating
it.
his pro-Zionist stance. A lot of these articles from that paper were compiled into a book by David Horowitz about maybe 20 years ago or so. And the person who wrote the review of the book was Netanyahu.
Oh, really?
Benjamin Netanyahu writes a review of that book. So it's interesting.
So Netanyahu is aware of
Current Prime Minister
C.T.
of Beth.
Russell?
He reviewed Horowitz's book about C.T. Russell. Yep.
Right. Right. I
So
was
that
going to
the
say,
Zionist stand was well known. So that's all the Germans would have known at the time. That's why Rutherford,
yeah,
when he writes his letter, has to say, "We don't like the Jews. We don't take money from Jews." He's trying to distance himself from the Jews. So there's a book that was written in French, Polish, and German called Crusade Against Christianity. And this was in the mid 1930s to late 1930s. And that's when the Watchtower really starts to take a stand against Hitler because they tried to appease him and didn't work. But in the book, all they write about is the atrocities against the Jehovah's Witnesses. They say
right.
nothing about the Jews and what the Jews were suffering. So if you were trying to make a stand against Hitler, where, you're making a stand against Hitler just because you're being persecuted and you don't care about anyone else. And when they talk about that period of history today, they don't care what happened to any of the other faiths. They only talk about what happened to them.
No, that's correct. I believe this to be fact is that when Beth Sarim, this was the mansion, I suppose, in San Diego, and this is during the Depression. Is that during the Depression?
Yeah.
Do you know about Rutherford's car? There was some very expensive car that he owned or something at the time. Do you know
Yeah,
much about his car?
He had several vehicles, and we actually have photos of them in our upcoming discussion on
Right.
Sarim.
Yep.
But yeah, he had the mansion during the darkest days of the Depression.
Yep.
But the interesting thing to me, the new find that we found was, who are these people that donated the money? Following that money, that was an interesting discussion. And who was the doctor that told Rutherford he should move to San Diego or move to Southern California because the client would have been better for his health, right?
Yes.
Well, found out that doctor was not really a doctor at all, and he went to prison in the state of California for practicing without a license.
Well, I mean, if people need a doctor's certificate to get a day off work, so that like this, and he needed a doctor's certificate to move out of Brooklyn, and he needed, San Diego is not nice weather there, so why not get a quack to do that for you? So, yeah.
And it's claimed that when you read in the Watchtower literature, it says Rutherford had one lung because he had pneumonia right after he got out of prison. It says right after an unjust imprisonment. Well, we know when he got out of prison. He got out of prison in mid-March of mid-March of that year, 1918, 19. I can't remember right now.
Yep.
1919. Sorry. Well, we know exactly when he got sick from those newspapers I was showing earlier, the St. Paul Enterprise.
Right.
It actually tells us when he got sick. It was a full 2.5 months later.
Right.
He was healthy between the time he was in prison and the time he got out of prison up until late May of that year.
Right.
It has nothing to do with his imprisonment. So why are they relating the imprisonment experience at all? My supposition is that they're just trying to generate sympathy. Oh, poor guy went to prison and he got sick there. But it's written in such a way that it's very suspicious what they're trying to do. And we discussed it in our upcoming video on that.
Good, good. The it's interesting that you said, and I try to follow that thinking at least, which is follow the money, because when it comes to, and my thinking is, I view Watchtower not as a religious entity. I'm not talking about the people at the Kingdom Halls. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those that control this multi-billion-dollar corporation. Is I look at it as a corporation. So my inquiry is follow the money. Because you can espouse any belief. That's okay. I'm all for that. But the money. So when you said about those people who gave the money for Beth Sarim or so forth, did you find very, how can I put it? Is there wealthy backers of Watchtower that you've been able to document that most Jehovah's Witnesses aren't aware of? Have you found, because there is whispers of very powerful people backing them from especially Rutherford's time on.
Well, we know that in 1915, Macmillan writes a letter, and he says basically, Watchtower is broke, we don't have any money left, and I'm going to need to leave and find a place to live. We have
Right.
that letter,
Interesting.
right? We also know that they let 70 people who worked there off that year. Rutherford was let go that year for the same reason.
In 17?
So in 1915, right? Rutherford doesn't really go back to headquarters until 17, until after Russell dies.
Right. He wasn't there during that time.
Right. He was living in California. He was at the World's Fair. So we actually, in our discussion on Judge Rutherford's death threat, from these newspapers, from the newspapers online, advertisements of places he was preaching at, we were able to track his whereabouts from week to week for a several-year period.
Wow.
And also this personal correspondence that we were talking about earlier. So it tells
Yes.
us where he was at the time that he wrote it, and all of the evidence lines up. But basically, he was still working for Watchtower Society. He was chairman of several of the conventions, and he was on his way back to Missouri because of this family farm issue and that death threat that his brother made against him. And when he heard that Russell died, and then we have in Macmillan's book that he wrote later, Faith on the March, that he called Bethel in Brooklyn and said, "Hey, the old man is dead, and don't do anything till I get back." And it's interesting because if you look at the St. Paul Enterprise paper, the editor of that paper was there, and he talks about from the first couple of days after Russell's death, there was already a power grab. And he reports it right in the paper and talks about how Macmillan was very mean to him. He was supposed to speak at Russell's funeral, and Macmillan said, "No way," stepped in and took charge. So, and he didn't have any qualms about publishing that in the paper. So it's interesting to see
Wow.
the power struggle going on so soon afterwards. But without this documentation, nobody would have known the full story.
Right. Yeah, that's because that's not the way. There's actually, I won't give advertisement here. There is a quite prominent Jehovah's Witness advocate who claims that the document is, that's not true, in the sense that Rutherford was at the headquarters, and it was a smooth transition to him, and the problems only happened later on, and all of this. But that clearly shows, as you're saying, that was not the case.
No.
And his position was, he was the chief legal representative of Watchtower.
Yeah. So if you remember the Miracle Wheat scandal that was going on.
Ah, yes, the Miracle Wheat, yes.
Miracle Wheat scandal, which is another discussion we just recently recorded, and it's upcoming. But basically, the Brooklyn Eagle is trying to interview people at headquarters there at Bethel, and
Yeah.
Rutherford even refused to give his name. He was just described as a tall a tall man and dressed in black, and was the society's legal counsel.
The Undertaker.
Yeah, pretty much. That subject's a dead end, though.
It is, absolutely, absolutely. So, thank you, Jeff. Is there any other stuff you'd like to show us before we'll have other conversations?
No, we have a whole bunch of other discussions coming up. We have a long list, but if you have any suggestions of things you would like to see, just hop on
Yes,
our channel and leave us a message or send us an
we
email.
will.
Right? It would help because we don't always think of all the things that people would like researched or like something to take a look at. Some of the discussions we have coming up are things that our viewers have suggested. So next week's video on Watchtower's first president is a viewer of our channel that requested we research and figure out who this guy was.
Well, Jeff, Justin is just saying here, you should share all these historical facts on the Six Screens program with Rick Farron. And have you been on Six Screens before, Jeff?
I have been before, yeah.
You have. Okay, well, I will, anytime, it's an open invitation to you to come onto my program there and to plug your program, because it is an incredible resource. And for everybody that's watching this, please support Jeff and the watchtowerhistory.org. You're on YouTube, aren't you?
Yeah. Yep. I posted the link at the beginning of the chat. So if you scroll through the chat, you'll see it there.
So is there just as
we would be happy to be on Six Screens with you. That would be great.
Absolutely. Well, you've got an open invitation. Julie says, this has been eye-opening. Thank you all for your hard work. Justin says, you like this because, you know, you should make a movie. I think you should be in it. You're the next Brad Pitt of the, you know, of the XJW. I mean, yeah, make a movie.
It would be nice if somebody got Netflix or somebody like that to do a documentary or a docudrama on the History Channel. Somebody work on that for us.
Well, that's never been done before, has it?
No, no. An objective view, not a Watchtower perspective view.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody's saying, so Janice and Justin and all of you, because I know I've got a lot of people watching, please support Jeff. He is, you know, you're the unicorn of this group, because your honesty, your transparency, and your thirst for proper or correct documentation is absolutely world class. And yes, we all have our opinions, but you're dealing with facts, and you are a researcher, and I respect you very much. Jeff, is there any closing things you'd like to, is there anything else you'd like to just add that you have found interesting, just any interesting documents or something that you found that is just interesting about Watchtower history? Anything?
All I would say is, if you're going to do the research, try to look at it objectively. Look at the documentation, state only what the documentation says. Even if you like or you don't like it, don't let that skew your perspective. Try to gather the documentation, let the documentation lead you to the answer. That would be my closing statement to how to investigate the history.
Thank you. Well, that's perfect. Jeff, let the facts speak, and whether we personally like it or not, bad luck. Justin says, how about Watchtower's connection to the occult? Episode 2. How about that?
That's coming up.
All right, Justin. It is. Thank you very much, and it's an absolute pleasure. I hope that everybody that's watching this supports you. I support you. You are a rare person, and what is incredible, and please never lose this, is that Jehovah's Witness researchers, non-Jehovah's Witness researchers, and former Jehovah's Witnesses like myself all can come to you and know that you have got the real documents, and that's it. It's not your opinion, and for that we're very grateful. People can make their own mind up. We all hold our opinion, but with you, Jeff,
Just ask me
you
for the
sit.
documentation, make your mind up based on the documentation.
That's correct, and I don't think you'll mind this, but God bless you, my friend, and thank you very much. And we will speak again. I will have my YouTube channel up soon, and I want to speak to you. And next time, I will speak to Paul, who is your co-host, and we haven't forgotten you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Paul wanted everyone to know. Facebook appears to have this limitation where you can only have 2 on at a time. And Paul wanted to be here with us, and that was the original plan. But
that's correct.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to make that work this time.
No. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody. God bless you all. And look, in these difficult times, unconditional time. What's it? Gordon Maxwell shared with Mike and Kim on this week ago. I don't even know who Gordon Maxwell is. Do you know who Gordon Maxwell is? No.
I don't even remember that video. I watched their channel, so.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope that all of you there enjoyed this. Please share it. And most importantly, for any guest, please, Jeff Mesra. Did I say, is it Mesra or is it Mesra okay?
It's a Czech name. So when we went to Czech Republic, I asked how to pronounce it. Mezara. So then
Mezara.
In Czech Republic, they said, yeah. So that would make my wife a checkmate, I guess.
Thank you. Thank you. I've really enjoyed this. You're a rare find. Thank you very much. And it's a privilege. And anytime, please, I will promote everything you do. Thank you for your unbiased, fact-based and scientific-based research. It's actually very helpful to everybody that's trying to grapple, this is my words, not yours, with a catastrophe. And I believe Jehovah's Witnesses, the way they are a catastrophe. So thank you very much for at least giving us the opportunity to have factual documents. So a Merry Christmas, Jeff, and to Justin and to all of you there,
Merry Christmas,
unconditional
everyone.
love. Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
God bless.